Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside, as always, by Joe Kometz for our weekly college show. College basketball season is here, but we also got bowl games. Going to hit on a little bowl talk as well. But Christmas week, not that many games, but with the weekend, with the holiday falling on the weekend this year, it's kind of a weird schedule. You don't have that normal Saturday full slate of games. So we're going to cover some games on Wednesday night, Friday night, and then a few on Saturday as well. Still got some big time games this week, but not as many as usual due to the holidays. But Joe, welcome back to the show as always. Happy holidays, and how are we?
I'm fantastic, Beef. As always, thank you for having me on. Happy holidays to you and your family. Happy holidays to everyone tuning into the show. Like you said, not the in terms of like the volume of games in one day, maybe not the best, but spread out from tomorrow through the rest of the weekend, you got some pretty good games.
Hmm.
I think this is definitely a very interesting slate, and some of these games, we have some Big East conference play starting. Other games we have some big non-conference games, kind of the last stretch of non-conference games heading into the new year. That's when it's full go for a conference season.
Yeah, like we're recording this on Tuesday night. Obviously, you got some Big East conference play already starting. I mean, Georgetown's playing Butler right now. Looks like Butler's pulling away there. Virginia Memphis is going on right now. That's a game between two ranked teams. You got Providence Marquette tonight, so we're really starting to get into it, and this is where we really see teams start to emerge. As you said, some of these non-conference games are winding down, but there's still a few big ones this week and over the course of the weekend that are going to either help or hurt some teams in some major ways. But before we get into college basketball, we got the Frisco Bowl tonight, Joe. Marshall, UTSA. You got any action on that game for the live viewers?
I might as well put something on it now while we're talking about it.
I got
I
Marshall
saw,
at +8.
I would say I saw Trent was all over UTSA, so stay away from that. For those who know who Book It with Trent is, Marshall +8. I'll take that quote. I'll take Marshall +8, and I'll take the under 46.5.
All right. There's our play for the Frisco Bowl tonight. We'll get into college basketball now. We go to Wednesday. Big time game at Madison Square Garden between two ranked teams. Number 10 Baylor versus number 21 Duke. A 7 o'clock tip off on ESPN tomorrow night. Duke projected to win this one at Haslam Metrics 80-77. So we'll go Duke -2.5 over under 156.5. Joe, who do you like in this one?
So I like Duke winning this game 81-77. I think MSG kind of turns into Durham North when UConn plays there. It's Store South, but Duke fans do travel well. I think they're going to be full force in this game. By the way, side note, it's very weird now. I have the ESPN page pulled up on my computer here and seeing the spreads because of ESPN Bet now, and
Mm-hmm.
like they have the little squares like you see on the other sports books on ESPN's website, and that's gonna definitely I'm never gonna be used to that. But I really like Duke in this game. 7-3, top 25 team, but in reality, that win against Michigan State is doesn't look as great as it did at the time. Loss at Arkansas, loss at Georgia Tech, which was very surprising to me. 0-1 in ACC play are the Blue Devils right now. And this is a pretty important game for them. If they lose this game, you're looking at a very unimpressive non-conference resume. Yeah, it's great to have good losses, but when you don't have that many good wins, it doesn't really matter. It's just a massive game. I think John Shire and the Duke fans are going to be ready for this one. I think John is going to get the Blue Devils ready. I think they're going to win a close game. I think Baylor also really kind of needs a prove it win after getting smoked by Sparty the other day. But I still think Duke's going to be able to keep the Bears at bay and win a close one.
I'm with you too, Joe. I like Duke -2.5 here, and I'm gonna go with the under of 156.5. I got Duke 75, Baylor 70. You were kind of touching on it, but Duke always travels well to MSG, and Baylor. They had that first game of the year against Auburn. That was one of like the best games of the first week. But since then, they haven't really played much. This Duke game is a big test, as you said, coming off that loss to a Michigan State team that looked dead in the water, and now they might be awake after kicking Baylor's ass the other night. So might have got exposed a little bit. They might be reeling a little bit, kind of questioning what's going on in that locker room after that type of performance. And as you touched on too, Duke needs a marquee win. I expect them to show up here. And with all the fans from Duke usually traveling to the Garden, making that a de facto home game, I think this is a good spot for Duke to get another win, and an impressive one for the resume because we haven't really talked about it that much big picture wise, but the ACC isn't looking that great at the top. You got Virginia losing to Memphis right now. Miami hasn't looked that great in some of their big games so far. UNC already has 3 losses. This is a down ACC. It's not going to be a lot of opportunities for big time wins. So getting a big time quad one neutral court win here over a Baylor team would be big for them going forward. So I like Duke to get this one done. All right, second game. We're going to go a little bit off the radar here. A team that I'd be surprised if they're on this show the rest of the year, but a team that been keeping a little bit of a close eye on early in the college basketball season. That's Purdue Fort Wayne. They're coming in at 11-1 in this one. They're traveling to Pitt, coming off a tournament appearance last year, a tournament win in the first 4. This is a 7 o'clock tip off on the ACC network. Pitt's projected to win 82-70, so we'll go Pitt minus 11.5 and over under 151.5. Joe, do you think there's any chance your Mastodons can pull off an upset here?
I don't. But shout out the Mastodons. 11-1 to start the year. Their only loss being at San Francisco, but they do have a win against DePaul. I know DePaul sucks, but that's a win against a power conference team, which, for a team like Purdue Fort Wayne, I don't think happens very often. But I'm going to go Pitt here pretty comfortably, 78-65. I think Pitt, like you said, Cole, coming off a tournament appearance last year, in a year where the ACC is pretty down, it looks like once again, a team that I wouldn't be surprised to be seen hanging around kind of the same spot they were last year. They might be finishing maybe 5th, 6th in the ACC. That might be enough to get them right into that first 4, Final 4 buys discussion come tournament time. And this actually could be a win that'll go a long way for them as the season goes on here. But I'm going to take Pitt to win this game comfortably. Haven't really watched either of these two teams play, so I'm just going with Pitt 78, Purdue Fort Wayne 65.
Yeah, I have Purdue Fort Wayne on here as a potential sleeper team come tournament time. We'll see if they're able to run their conference and maybe get like a 13 or a 14 seed. But as you said, a win here could go a long way for them going forward and potentially helping them get a better seed if they do wind up making it out of their conference tournament. But just kind of wanted to get them on the radar here. Shout out to them for a really strong start to the year and a chance to go make some major noise at Pitt. But at Pitt being at home, I think they find a way to get it done. But I will take Purdue Fort Wayne to cover, make this a close game. I think it's a pretty good back and forth battle, but I'll go Pitt 75, Purdue Fort Wayne 70. So plus 11.5 there for Fort Wayne and the under of 151.5. All right, we go to another game on Wednesday night now, a big-time battle in the Big East. Villanova traveling to Omaha to play number 12 Creighton. 9 o'clock tip-off on FS1. Haslam's projecting this one as a 73-67 win by Creighton. So we'll go Creighton minus 5.5, over under 139.5. Joe, does Creighton get the win at home here?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be pretty low scoring and pretty close as well. I'm going Creighton 69, Villanova 65. I just refuse to believe Villanova is like a not good basketball team. I know they have losses to Drexel on their schedule. I know they struggled in the Big Five, but I think they're going to get a real nice opportunity here. Nationally broadcast a game on FS1, even though it is in Creighton, and that does suck to open up Big East play on the road. But this is going to be one of those games that if Nova does want to make a run at the tournament, they're going to be looking back at and be like, wow, I'm glad we started Big East play at Creighton. Probably in terms of consistency over the past like 4 or 5 seasons, probably one of the best home court advantages in the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like ever since, Dougie Buckets was there back in the day, they've, been packing out Creighton. Not a lot else to do in Omaha in the wintertime, especially with, Nebraska football being done. All the Nebraska football fans probably become Creighton Blue Jay fans in the wintertime. So I'm taking Creighton here. They're going to ride the home crowd to a close victory, 69-65.
Yeah, I'll piggyback, Joe, off of what you were saying about Creighton and being a really good home team. one of the toughest places to play in the country for sure. Since Greg McDermott took over in 2010, Creighton is 188 and 42 straight up at home, 165 and 29 as a home favorite, 118, 95 and 2 at home against the spread, and 107 and 85 against the spread as a home favorite. So a very, very dominant team at home. You rarely see a team go in there, win, let alone or cover the spread and let alone get a win. So this is a spot where I really like Creighton. It's really high on Villanova coming into the year, and I just don't think that they have enough high level shooting to win at a high level this year as some of us expected them to. So I think Creighton does. They have the shooters, they have the scores, and I think they're able to just get this one done at home, win it pretty easy with the cover as well. I'll go Creighton 78, Villanova 70. So Creighton minus 5.5, and I'll take the over of 139.5. Another game where I'm really looking forward to finding out more about these two teams. You got number 11 North Carolina versus number 7 Oklahoma. This one's in Charlotte, the Jumpman Classic, I believe it is. So it's another game where it's kind of like a de facto home game for North Carolina in this spot, but a 9 o'clock tip on ESPN. Oklahoma comes in this one of the 4 unbeaten teams left in college basketball. They're projected to win 79-73. So we'll go Oklahoma minus 5.5 over under 151.5. Joe, does UNC knock off Oklahoma for the first time this year?
Yes, I think Oklahoma is due for a loss. I will be shocked. I know our guy Haslam has Oklahoma as a 5.5 point favorite. I will be, if that is the spread, I will put my life savings on UNC plus 5.5. They might
How
not end
much
up
is
winning
that?
the game. What?
How much is that?
Actually, a decent amount now that I've been working. It's not like last year where my life savings was like a couple $100 and a couple of cases of Natty Light that I found lying around Lake. I actually have some decent money now. I feel like a growing boy. But I'm going UNC 80, Oklahoma 73. This game being a home, like even like I know you're saying de facto because it's in Charlotte. That's going to be like a 95% UNC crowd, especially to Michael Jordan. I wouldn't be shocked if they panned to him like in the box seats or courtside
50
because
times.
I'm gonna say, yeah, it is his invitational. It is his alma mater. I still think Oklahoma's a very good team. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be a tournament team. I think they're going to be pretty good in the Big 12. But this is an Oklahoma team that, if you kind of look at who they've beaten so far, there's not a lot of games. They have the Arkansas win that really jump out at you. I guess maybe how they beat Providence is impressive. But USC, now being 5-5, who knows how good of a win that is. I think this is their biggest test by far going into the season. But after this game, just kind of looking ahead a little bit, you have 4 straight games where you have Monmouth, looks like Central Arkansas, home against the Maclay Cyclones, and then at TCU before they have to play Kansas on January 13th at Fog Allen. So if Oklahoma can pull off I'm calling it an upset. Like I said, I know they're favored but if they can pull off this upset, you could see Oklahoma potentially going undefeated into Fog Allen and making a big game even bigger. So that would be really cool. But I think UNC is just a better basketball team.
A quick note on this one: Oklahoma 8-2 against the spread this year on the season. One of the better teams in college basketball in that regard, but they I think benefited a little bit from being underdogs or not really properly rated at the beginning of the year. Took advantage of that. UNC only 4-6 against the spread this year, so something to keep an eye on this game for in terms of betting there with the trends. But I think this is, as you were saying, going to be basically a home game for North Carolina. Oklahoma isn't that great and not good enough, I think, to still be undefeated this late. I think they are due for a slip up, and I think this is a perfect spot to do it against a veteran UNC team that, despite losing to Kentucky last week, that they've still been playing pretty solid ball and definitely a lot better than they were last year. I think it's going to be a big day in this one for Armando Bacot, and I think Oklahoma is going to fall for the first time this year. I'm going to go UNC 75, Oklahoma 71. So UNC plus 5.5, under 151.5. But Joe, as you were touched on, if Oklahoma is able to win this game, put some real respect on their name. They're going to be a team that is competing up there in the top 10 for a majority of the season. All right, last game on Wednesday now. This is a fun one, and 2 teams that have been really challenging themselves in the non-conference. Give them credit because they still play in 2 of the best conferences in the sport as well. But Alabama, who's struggling to start out the year, only at 6-4, Big week for them versus number 4 Arizona. This one's in Phoenix, so basically another home game. Certainly going to be 95% Arizona fans, I would think, at this game. But an 11 o'clock tip on ESPN. Arizona are projected to win this one 93-83. So we'll go Arizona minus 9.5, over under 175.5. I don't remember a game ever being that big, but that would be pretty insane to see a number that high. But I'm curious to see if you're still taking the over there.
Yeah, I'll have fun. I'll take the over. I'll go Arizona 101, Bama 92. Because the beauty of this is that I can type in whatever score I want, and then that'll be my prediction for the spreads. I do think this is going to be a high scoring game, though, all jokes aside. Arizona right in the middle of a very tough 4-game stretch. The fact that on paper this might be the easiest of the 4 is crazy. They played Wisconsin, who was number 23 at the time. They played Purdue over the weekend on the Peacock game, which don't get me started. The fact that it was on the cock and not on cable TV. You have this game, and then a game we're actually going to be talking about later in the show. They played Florida Atlantic on Saturday. So really big stretch for Arizona here, currently number 4 in the country. Meanwhile, you got Alabama, who is, like you said, Coyle, 6-4, kind of like Duke. They have good losses. They lost to Ohio State, lost to Clemson, who's a really good team. Lost at Creighton, and then you have the loss to Purdue. So good losses, but it's tough. When you don't have any big wins. If Bama were to somehow pull this off on a neutral court, this is a win that they could hang their hats on for the rest of the season. Whereas if they were to lose this game, they finish with a weird road game at Liberty to end the non-conference play before they head into the SEC. You got to get winning quick if you're Alabama if you want to start building up a tournament resume, because I don't know how much favor they're going to have from the number 1 overall seed in last year's tournament. So Arizona big in this game.
Yeah, certainly a big week for both teams. But we talked about it a little bit right there at the beginning. Not sure I've seen a total this high. Be intrigued to see if it does come in at this, but it's a game where it kind of reminds me of USC versus Washington in football this year. No matter what, I'm still going to take the over in this one. Huge game for Bama. You were touching on. They've been struggling out of the gate, but they've been playing some tough games. They might benefit them down the stretch, but a team that saw a lot of turnover from last year, a win here would be huge going into SEC play, but I just don't see it. I'm going to go Arizona 95, Alabama 90. So I'll go Alabama plus 7.5, and the over of 175.5. I think both these teams stylistically like to get up and down. I'm going to be able to go score for score with each other, but I just think Arizona is a better basketball team than this Alabama squad is right now. Maybe by year's end, Alabama is going to be able to play themselves into maybe like a 6 or a 7 team or 7 seed, maybe like a 21-12, 23-10 type record, something like that. But I just think right now this Arizona team is a lot better. Losing to Purdue in close fashion is nothing to hang your head about. So I think this is a good bounce back spot for them in a game where it should be a really fun up and down track meet type style matchup. All right, we go to Friday now. One game on Friday, a rivalry game. Number 13, Illinois versus Mizzou in St. Louis. A 9 o'clock tip on FS1. Illinois projected on Haslametrics to win this game 77-68. So we go Illinois minus 8.5, over under 144.5. Joe, Mizzou coming off a loss to Seton Hall the other day. Do you think they can bounce back here?
No, I think this is going to be a very close, very entertaining, rivalry style game. This game, I'm surprised doesn't get a lot of hype as a rivalry game. But Missouri and Illinois, people forget St. Louis is basically right on the border of those two states. A little bit more into Missouri. I believe they're playing this game where the St. Louis Blues play in hockey. So I'm assuming it'll be a sellout or damn near close to it. I'm very excited for this game. I always, when it comes to rivalry games, I take the under and I take the dog to, keep it close. I'm going to take Mizzou plus the 8.5. I'm going to go Illinois 67, Mizzou 61. I'm going to take the under as well. Maybe a little bit more points than 67-61, but I still like the under in this game. But Missouri, really, they're in a tough stretch right now, having, back-to-back losses against Seton Hall and Kansas. Another team, like I was saying, when it came to Bama in the previous game, they lose this game. Missouri's really got an uphill battle if they want to attempt to make a run at an NCAA tournament at large bid.
Mm-hmm.
So I really recommend for the Tigers to win this game. However, I just think Illinois is a better team. I think they're going to be able to grind this one out. I could see this game, maybe take Missouri first half spread. That might be the play on this game, honestly. I could see Illinois kind of grinding out the clock late and winning like a really physical, low scoring game.
Yeah, I'm kind of flirting with the same notion as you, Joe. Rivalry game, so I think Mizzou is going to keep it close. If it is an 8.5 point number, I really do like Mizzou to cover that. They've taken a big step back from last year, though. I thought they were a team ready to kind of take that next leap. They were a 7 seed, I believe, last year in the tournament, and think that they coming into this year, I was expecting them to be like a 3 or 4 seed, kind of like Alabama did over the past few years, where gradually build, and then you might be able to get up to that top number one line. But Mizzou has taken a step back to start the year. Still plenty of time to correct it. Maybe they're able to right the ship in a rivalry game here. But I do think Illinois, on the other hand, is the second best team in the Big Ten right now. I think they're going to be a tough out in that conference behind Purdue all year. So I'm going to take Illinois to win this game, but Mizzou to keep it close. I like the Illini a lot this season. I think Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to have a big time year and really help this Illinois team kind of break through, maybe go to the Sweet 16 this year. But I'll go Illinois 74, Mizzou 68. So Mizzou plus 8.5 in the under of 144.5. All right, that's it for the weekday games. We go to Saturday now. We get some conference play, and then we got a few more non-conference games to wrap up the non-conference part of college basketball for the most part. But we start in the Big East with a Butler team that just won their Big East opener tonight, playing at Providence, who will be tipping off in about 15 minutes over on FS1 against Marquette. But this is a 12 o'clock tip on FS1, Butler at Providence. Providence projected to win 72-66. So go Providence minus 5.5 over under 137.5. Joe, does Providence protect the home floor in this matchup?
Yeah, Providence home court is insane. I always hate playing there. I always hate watching UConn play there. Um, but I think Providence is going to win this game 70-64. That I will say, I will change my pick if Providence pulls off the upset tonight against Marquette. It's the classic like college, and with college football or basketball, if you pull off a big upset, especially with college basketball being multiple games a week, if they were to somehow pull off the upset against Marquette tonight, I could totally see them coming out flat
Mm-hmm.
against Butler, who is, like you said, they beat Georgetown, which isn't saying much, but 10-2 overall, only 2 losses being at Sparty, and then neutral court, I believe, when they lost to Florida Atlantic. And if not neutral court, then they were on the road. But that being said, I mean, a pretty decent resume if you got 10 wins. If Butler can, beat the below average teams in the Big East and lose to the above average teams, because I do think Butler's taking a step forward from last year, but that's not that hard to do. They weren't very good. But I think they're going to kind of be like maybe the 6, 7 seed in the Big East tournament. Like I could see them getting the 6 and playing, like the first game of that like Wednesday or maybe Tuesday of the Big East tournament. I'm forgetting off the top of my head when that like first round is. But I think Butler's going to be a pretty solid team. But I think having to go to Providence at this point is just too tall a task. Give me the Friars, especially if they were to lose in a bounce back spot Saturday.
Yeah, Joe, this is the game on Saturday I'm looking forward to the most, just not overall game wise, but kind of figuring out a little bit more about these two teams. As you said, with Providence, they have the chance to beat Marquette. That game actually just tipped off. But what are these two teams? Like, I'm intrigued to see if they're as good as the record says they are. I think the Big East is going to be ran this year by UConn and Creighton. Then you basically have everyone else with Providence, Butler, Villanova, Xavier, St. John's, all kind of fitting for the middle tier. Then you have ninth, I think, will be Georgetown. And then obviously at the bottom, at number 10 will be DePaul. But I think behind UConn and Creighton, you have a lot of room for teams to get in the mix there and potentially be that third, that fourth team. I don't think the league is as good as we thought it was coming into the year. Excuse me, I left Marquette out of that equation as well, but they're up in there, obviously up in that top three with with Creighton and UConn. So I think those are the big three teams, but then you throw in like Villanova in the mix. And I think you can throw these two teams of Butler and Providence in the mix. I think this game will kind of tell us a little bit more about where each of these teams are, but I'm going to give the nod to the home team. I think that they play this one really tight back and forth. I'm going to take Butler to cover the 5.5. But I'm going to go Providence 74, Butler 70. So I will take the over of 137.5. But I think this is a measuring stick game for both teams, and we see kind of what they are. We go to a non-conference game. I believe this is the Never Forget Classic or Tribute. I went to this event X amount of years ago, but Mississippi State versus Rutgers in Newark at the Prudential Center. So kind of a Rutgers type of home game. It wasn't that crowded the one year I went, but still probably a pretty decent amount of Rutgers fans there. I oddly enough saw Mississippi State there. I don't know what their connection is really to this tournament, but 12 o'clock tip on the Big Ten Network. Mississippi State projected to win 68-61. So we got Mississippi State minus 6.5, over under 128.5.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you explained that this is like the never forget classic. Because I was going to say, like, why is Rutgers playing where Seton Hall normally plays? Like, I know it's an NBA or it's an NHL arena. It used to be NBA when the New Jersey Nets were there, but I feel like that didn't make any sense. You just explained it though. I'm going Rutgers close here, 62-59. Kind of for the reason, Cole, you alluded to. I could see camera shots of this game with the arena being like 60% empty.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas weekend, people traveling, especially going through New York City and the Newark area. I could see this being a relatively empty arena, but the contingent that is there is going to be heavy, in support of Rutgers, I would have to imagine. I don't see Mississippi State fans traveling up for this game. Um, I mean, I could be wrong. There could be a big Bulldog contingent, but I doubt it. But I'm going to go Rutgers in an ugly kind of just going to be this game's on Big Ten Network. I'm probably not going to watch it. There's going to be other things on. I think this is just going to be one of those ugly games that I'm going to look at my phone and be like, I'm glad I didn't turn this game on. Give me Rutgers 62, Mississippi State 59. Shout out the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, this is, you said it best, Joe. It's going to be an ugly one. I think it could wind up being like a first to 60 wins. I don't think either team's going to get there. Mississippi State has shown some improvements. They have had some nice offensive outings this year on that side of the ball. But if you combine the past 2 years with Chris Jans as the head coach, they're 27-18 in favor of the under, and Rutgers is 28-16 in the past 2 years in favor of the under. So two teams stylistically that play their best when they're playing slower paced, physical, defensive minded matchup. Two of the best teams in that regard in the major six conferences, which make those tough games against some of these conference teams. That's a tough thing to emulate and practice. Everyone can't really match that physicality. So I think that's why come conference play, both these teams are going to be pretty well suited because they can beat up on some other teams. But when they play against each other, it's just going to look like two, football teams kind of playing back and forth. It might be like a 50-45 type game by the end, but I think Mississippi State pulls this one out. I've watched them a few times this year. Excuse me. They're really hit or miss, like what team you're getting out of them, but I think they win this one. But I will take Rutgers to cover. I'll go 59-55 Mississippi State. So Rutgers plus 6.5 and under 128.5. All right, two more games left on Saturday. We talked about this team earlier with Arizona, a big week for them. They've now had Purdue, they've had Duke, they've had Alabama tomorrow night, and now this game against Florida Atlantic. Some pretty good non-conference games, but that's number 4 Arizona versus number 14 Florida Atlantic out in Vegas. A 3 o'clock tip-off on Fox. Arizona projected to win this one 85-77. So we'll go Arizona minus 7.5, over under 161.5.
By the way, speaking of teams that don't score 60, for those who keep wondering why I'm turning my head, I have the Memphis Virginia game on right here. Memphis 67, Virginia 48 with 5:24 to go. Anyways, back to this game. I have Arizona winning this game 89-77. I think Arizona is that good. Obviously they had that loss to Purdue, but besides that, I could see Arizona as a Final Four team. They were my national champion pick back in March. Obviously not Providence, Princeton pulled off the upset there. But I really like this Arizona team, and I think this is going to be a statement win, a de facto home game, which I hate more than actual neutral site games. Why not play this game on campus? I get, sponsors pay money, but it's just so frustrating to me. Like, it would be a lot cooler if this game was at Arizona rather than in Phoenix. But Florida Atlantic having a really good year. They lost to Illinois at the Garden. They have that weird loss to Bryant Coyle. You guys were actually up at my house when that happened. But this is another big test. Shout out to Owls for scheduling these tough non-conference games. Playing A&M, playing Butler, playing Virginia Tech. All power conference teams in the non-conference. Playing Illinois, like I just said, playing Arizona. They're definitely getting themselves battle tested. They are trying to prove that last season's Final Four run was not a fluke. Um, and this, they're kind of going to be like the new Houston Memphis rivalry. They play Memphis twice over the last 4 games of the season. They go to Memphis on February 25th. And then on March 9th, I don't know why they call it, you and I talked about this off camera. The season, I feel like, is a week later this year because March 9th is the last week of the regular season. They host Memphis to end the year. That's going to be a really exciting game to watch. I know I'm looking, 3 months ahead already, but I think Florida Atlantic is a very good team. I just don't think they're on the caliber of Arizona. If this was a true neutral site game, maybe a little differently, but basically being, on campus, I think the crowd's just going to be too much. Give me Arizona.
Yeah, the crazy thing with this one is, Joe, with Arizona, they went in last Saturday 8-0 straight up and 8-0 against the spread. They lost that game to Purdue, and now they have a game against Alabama where, you get a hot shooting Alabama team. I could see them knocking them off, and then a really good Florida Atlantic team too. They could be 8-3 before you know it, headed into Christmas. And they were just 8-0 a week ago. So a big week here for Arizona to kind of stay up there at the top of the sport. Um, but this one, I think, obviously means a lot more to FAU as they try to build up that at-large resume as much as possible. You touched on it, a loaded non-conference they've played. But I do think this Arizona team is really good. Final Four good. I don't think losing to Purdue, you should hang your head on that one. And I think their size advantage at most spots will be the difference in this one. Florida Atlantic plays a lot of guards, and they're not that big. So outside of Golden, I think they're a little small for their positions, and there's a reason for that. That's why they're in the American Athletic Conference at a Florida Atlantic and not at a school like Arizona at the end of the day. So I think this game's going to be good, and I think we're going to see two teams kind of get up and down the floor a little bit. But I do like at the end of the day, I do like Arizona to find a way to win this game and to cover. I'm going to take them 85-75. So I got Arizona minus 7.5 and under 161.5. And to finish off the night, we go to the Big East with St. John's at number 5, UConn. 8 o'clock tip-off on Fox. UConn projected to win this one by 14, 82-68. So we go UConn minus 13.5, and over-under is 149.5.
I will be in the building for this game. I'm very excited. I'm going UConn 88, St. John's 73. Obviously, I'm a little biased here, but I think UConn can cover that spread. I like the over 149. Now, I know UConn last year dominated the non-conference and then was a little, iffy come conference play. And, playing Pitino does scare me because at the end of the day, it is Rick Pitino who's a coach. But if you look at this St. John's team, they're 7-3, but some of their wins are kind of suspect as well. They have a 1-point win against North Texas, losses to Michigan, Dayton, and Boston College. Puke in my mouth with that one. And then, they have a close win at West Virginia, who's not having the best year. I don't really know what to think about the Red Storm. Going to learn a lot about them. I believe they play Xavier tomorrow. The 20th is tomorrow, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to learn more about them there, but I just think UConn's the better team. I don't see UConn stumbling yet because, they started Big East play last year kind of the same way. They went out, they dominated the first couple of games in conference play. Then, they hit that stretch where they played like Marquette, Xavier, Marquette again. Like they basically played like the top 5 teams outside of them in like 8 out of like 9 or 10 games. Maybe not that much, but it was very crazy the rate that they, played those games with. You kind of have that stretch. You don't really have that stretch at all, actually, when I'm looking at UConn's schedule. Maybe a little bit later in the year, they go Marquette, Creighton, Nova, Seton Hall, Marquette again. So that's kind of a tough stretch to end Big East play. But if UConn, plays their game, I think they're a better team than St. John's. They should have no problem. I just don't see them having an answer for Klingon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with St. John's, it's going to take some time to obviously get that rolling. The thing with having a coach like Rick Pitino, who's a bit on the older side, you don't have that much time, so they're going to have to try and get it turn around as quick as possible to get this program moving in the right direction before he eventually stops coaching. But this is a game where if it was at St. John's, at the Garden, I think that I would give St. John's a real chance at the upset here. I know UConn fans travel really well there historically, but I think later in the year it's going to be one. Watch out for a potential upset once St. John's gets a little bit more comfortable. I think they are going to pick off some teams that don't see it coming. They might be a nice play on some underdog money line bets when we get later in the season, because Rick Pitino is just going to do what he does and coach some teams at different times. But I do think UConn is right up there with one of the best one or two teams in the country right now. They have to be at that table talking national title repeat potentially, and they're just a wagon. And I don't think it's far fetched to say that they could be a repeat national champion this year. So I'm going to take UConn in this one. I think the way that they're playing right now, it's kind of hard to stop, and I don't think St. John's is there quite yet. I don't think they're going to get there this year either, but I do think come season end, this is going to be a St. John's team that's going to be a tough out and potentially make some noise in the Big East tournament and get to the NCAA tournament. But we're still in December. There's still some stuff to work out for St. John's from what I've seen so far. I think UConn keeps it rolling here. 85-71, so UConn minus 13.5. And we go with the over of 149.5 there. All right, but that'll do it. A big week there in college basketball. We got a little bit of everything. We got Wednesday night hoops, we got Friday, and then we got Saturday as well. So some big games. We got college football, NFL, and then obviously the holidays coming up. But anything else, Joe, before we head out?
Rick Pitino is 1-1 in games I attend that he is coaching. Granted, this was in Atlantic City a couple years ago. Coyle and I went to the MAC tournament, the Big MAC, the MAAC, back in the day, hoping he goes to 1-2. But we said at the beginning of the show, hope everyone has a great Christmas, New Year's. We'll be back on our next show, Coyle. Will probably be the playoff preview. No.
Yeah, we'll probably do a double dip that week, college football and then a little college basketball as well. So we got some big stuff coming up.
From here till the Super Bowl, it is all gas, no brakes when it comes to sports. One of the best times of the year, especially from now. Then you have a little bit of a lull, but then it's March Madness. I mean, it's awesome. This is the best time for being a sports fan.
Yeah, and we can focus in primarily on college because both of our NFL teams will not be doing any damage down the stretch.
I would commit a felony to be 10-4 right now. That's all I will say. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, just think we were 10-1 just 3 weeks ago. And now it's over. But that's why we have college basketball. And while we root for Villanova and UConn here, I do not live and die with all their losses. So that's the beauty of it. But as always, everyone, thank you for listening. Please enjoy the holidays, and we will talk next week for some college basketball and the college football playoff preview.